another episode of Fighting with the Baron. This is Eric Saturn, and we're going to be talking about sword and shield. Now, the type of swords we're going to be talking about are going to be rattan swords, not actual metal swords. If we actually use real metal swords, we could really do some permanent damage to ourselves. But this is pretty much a standard size sword. I have what's known as a basket hilt, which helps me to do several things. Number one, gives a nice counterweight, so the center of gravity is really low to the basket hilt, so therefore I can rotate very quickly and not having to use more energy than needed to transition shots. Also, it helps me get a chance to block some shots, therefore I don't need to have full hand protection. A lot of people use an open guard, which means that they have to have a full gauntlet so their hands don't get injured. When you're looking at a sword, you're essentially looking at a sword from the lower half and the upper half. Okay? The lower half of the sword, you very rarely do a lot of hitting with. There is some shots, but it's more along the lines of almost a punch. Those can be hard to control or even have enough force in them to be sufficient. So what you mainly try and do is you try and have the upper part of the sword where you're doing most of the shots. As you can see right here, pretty much you can see all the damage mostly occurs here. Now the interesting thing about the lower part is that the lower part can be used as, when we talk about shields, as it says right here, sword. What that means is that you can use your sword as a blocking device. Should you block it up here? No, it takes a lot of force. Down here, you can stop a lot of force without having to potentially twist a wrist or anything like that. So blocking here in the lower half is always a good way of blocking a shot that you could not reach with your shield, or if you're really good, you can use and take a shield and block majority of everything low, and you're using the sword to block everything high. That's one technique. There's many techniques of fighting, and we'll be talking about those next week. But I'm just showing you essentially the basic aspects of the sword. The top half is for striking, bottom half is mostly used for blocking, and the basket guard is there to protect you. Okay? Now the shields. Okay? As I said in my class yesterday, what I like to do is I like to have very small shields when I first start teaching people. This breaks down to one major thing that I see that happens all the time. When people first start using a really big shield, they put it out there and then they don't move it and they hide behind it. That is not the purpose of the shield. Okay? So this is a small center grip. This is a small strapped heater. Now, this is just for training value. Normally you would have additional protection, so when something get hit here, you're not getting your knuckles bashed. This is just for training purposes right now. Okay? So, and I believe I turned the camera around correctly, so everything should be, this is right side and this is left side. So I hope that's working out this time. So the first thing you need to do whenever you're doing sword and shield is, before you do any type of blocking, any type of hitting, is you need to get your stance. Okay? Your stance is going to be your starting position. If you are right-handed, you're going to have the sword in the right hand, you're going to have the shield in the left. Then you're always going to have your left leg forward. Okay? You want to make sure that your feet are shoulder width apart. Okay? From there, you want to make sure that you put your left hand like a fist, put it against your heart, and you just bring it straight out. Now what you want to do is you want to be able to see, all right? When this happens, you're now able to change range. This is why I put range right in the middle. The range game, and if you're going to call it all that a lot, the range game is going to be dependent upon the best way to move to block a shot or to move and throw a shot. So you might want to start way out of range. I can't hit him, he can't hit me. All right, now we want to go and start moving a little bit. One of the first things you need to learn is to actually move forward in your original stance. So like I said, left leg forward, feet spread shoulder width apart, knees slightly bent. And what you want to do is you want to lift up with your left leg and push forward with your right. Same thing if you want to go backwards, you lift up with your right and push off with your left. And that is how you get your stance always consistent, but still have ability to change your range. Now when you want to start throwing shots, remember what I said. You gotta step, throw, and then land, okay? Now I'm not gonna use the sword on this because it's way too big. I'm gonna just use, like I said yesterday, my knife hand practice, all right? The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna practice what's known as a flat snap. It's pretty much the first shot that everyone is taught. The flat snap is just a straight shot across. Like I had before in the demonstration, I'll use green. The flat snap is pretty much going to be the straight across shot. It can be even a straight down shot, okay? There's no angles, there's no twisting or anything. It is a straight shot straight into your opponent. Now, the best way to teach this is to do what's known as the waiter technique, okay? If you go to any place and there's a waiter, they're gonna have a tray in their hand, okay? To practice the waiter technique, you go and you put it on your shoulder and you want to step forward with your right foot and say, would you like something to drink? And then bring it back. As you can see, I'm stepping with my right leg past my left, starting movement. I'm throwing the shot, and then boom. Would you like something to drink? Remember what I said before, you want to essentially, yeah, and then continue past the shot. This is the same thing. Here you go. Here's something to eat. Would you like something to drink? Exact same type of thing. You want to make sure you're engaging the shot. First, step forward. Now, as you can see with the shield's not changing position. What's going to happen is, for a lot of people when they first start fighting, they're going to do what's known as drop the shield. They're going to do this and then throw a shot. You got to keep that right at heart level, straight out, and you want to learn, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to hit the shield. To get away from that, what you do is you step and you turn your hip a little bit, which opens up the shot. That means that you're not going to hit your arm or the sword against your shield. So step, turn, throw, land the shot. That is pretty much the flat snap. From the shoulder, step out. Exact same thing. Now, When you want to start doing a flat snap to the opposite side of the body, this is when you need to understand how you need to change your movement, okay? What I mean by that is, an example is this. Whatever side you're going to throw is the hip side that needs to move forward. So if I'm going to be throwing this way, I need to throw my right hip forward, okay? Now if I'm going to be throwing the same type of shot to the left side, what I need to do is I need to step with my left foot forward, and I'm going to change the angle because I'm going to show you how the elbow, wrist, shoulder comes into play. I have to step with my left hip, and again, turning. What that does is it opens the shield side to my sword side to protect this area, and then I throw. Now what's going to be interesting is when the elbow is down, you will always throw to your right side, your opponent's left. To throw to the opposite side, a lot of people have a problem because they're trying to keep their elbow down and they can't throw. So the correction for that is simply take your elbow and raise it up. Huge key when you first start fighting. Elbow down, this side. Elbow up, this side. And that's going to be the same way whether you're trying to do the X or the cross or anything. Okay? Now, there's a thing called a rising snap. Okay? A rising snap is where you throw a shot low. Now, a lot of people do this intentionally again, where they, instead of just throwing straight for the head, they will immediately throw for the shield. There's a fear involved of, I'm going to hurt someone, I'd rather hit their shield and they're not going to get hurt. Well, you're not really learning how to fight, you're learning to just hit a shield. So do you want to make sure when you throw the shot that you, as you're throwing, bringing it up. So you always need to make sure, and instead of just throwing straight flat, this is good to get the technique, but you're also going to have to learn to adjust with the shoulder. Now you can also do it by a dropping snap, where you're dropping the shoulder to go and get a leg or a hip, okay? So rising is the most common and dropping is the next. So flat, rising, low, okay? That's the way it's going to be pretty much all the time. Now, we're going to do, the next thing is called a thrust, okay? Thrust is one of the things that I teach pretty much everyone after they get most everything done for the flat snaps on the angles, because a flat snap can be at an angle too, such as the X and for the cross. Once you get those taken care of, there's two other ones that need to be worked on. They're used less, but they're also very important. The first one is going to be the thrust. The thrust is where you take the very center or the very tip of the sword and you're going to thrust straight in. Now, here is where people get really frustrated about thrusting, okay? A lot of people believe that they have to have a hard wrist because they go and they throw the shot and it lands. Here, it has to be a little bit more delicate because it's much more dangerous. You could really throw a shot really hard, hit someone in the helm, and all of a sudden they're unconscious. You can also hit someone really hard in the side of the body, potentially break a rib. Because you're taking, instead of a force of this whole thing, you're taking all the force to a very small point. So you want to make sure you're controlling it better. So to control it, what you need to do is you actually need to, when you're thrusting, actually turn your wrist a bit to make sure you're spiraling the point to the area that you're aiming for, okay? So like I said, when you want to go up or down, you're pretty much going with the shoulder. To determine the angle that you want to hit, you need to go and focus in on the wrist. Same thing like this, like this. All it is just dropping a little bit and making sure that you're getting the right specific angle. So the wrist is really important on determining the final position of your shot, the accuracy, okay? So thrusting is important. It's one of those things too where when you start practicing it, you need to make sure if you do it against a person, you might want to do some what's known as slow work, where you're going 1/4 speed, half speed, so you're getting the form position right, because it's a totally different position to do this compared to this, okay? Now, the other thing is the wrap, okay? The wrap is a very good shot. The wrap is where you actually throw behind your opponent. Now, this occurs if you get someone who has a really long sword, they're going to be fighting at longer range. Someone with a really short sword is going to be at a very close range. But if someone with a very long sword is somehow really close, they now have less shots. So what they do is they start throwing around the person. Now, the interesting thing about that too is you don't get wrap shots from a right-handed person to the right side of your opponent. That's like doing this, okay? You throw that move when you got nothing else and you just want to look really good when you die. The max you're going to do is actually going to be opposite shoulder. That's going to be as far as you're going to be able to go. So what you want to do is you actually want to step to your opponent and throw not directly to your opponent, but about 45 degrees to the outside of your opponent. And once you get almost fully extended, that's when you change your elbow position, like you're throwing to the opposite side of the body. And what you're doing is, that's bringing it down. And what you're going to do is you're going to snap it and get to the back of the leg, body, shoulder, head. So that's another one of those things where you actually have to learn. You actually have to take the full, complete step to throw the shot. Now, as I was saying yesterday, one of the biggest issues that's going to be on movement that someone texted me yesterday and asked this question, very important question. What is the best way to do things? Okay. Number one, you should always videotape, if you can. Pretty much we all have cell phones now. So when you start practicing, videotape your practices. Now there's a thing called a PEL. All it is a piece of wood in the ground, wrapped in carpet, with tape, things like that. And when you can practice that, like you're actually hitting a person, so you can do full hits without worrying about hitting anyone or hurting anyone. Excuse me. So that's important. Whenever you're doing something, videotape it so you can watch it later. What you're going to find out is you're going to start, when you first start fighting, you're going to throw shots. You're like, yeah, this is great. Yeah, oh, that felt terrible. Oh, that felt even worse. If you're not sure what the problem is, watching the tapes might tell you exactly what the problem is. But the majority of the time, it's going to be the fact that you threw a shot before you stepped. So like I said, you should always step first and then throw. If you're starting to throw and then step, you're changing your speed and your dynamic of movement. So you're like, I'm doing this, and then I'm stopping and stepping, and then I'm doing this. Why did that feel so weird? Why did it not have a lot of force? Because you threw first. So always step first and then throw. The other interesting thing is you can actually do what's known as fakes, okay? And we'll do a lot more of those next week. Fakes is where you're showing that you're doing one thing, but you're going to do another. So if you take this and you take a full step and the person's like, oh, he's going to throw to my left side, and they go like this, you can go, aha, and then change and take a step with your left, and now their right side is wide open. So you can telegraph some of your shots. You can telegraph to fake a shot. But the most important thing is you have to start moving first. There are going to be a few times when you don't need to move, okay? Now, those types of shots are what I call sniping shots. I think it's 1P. Now, what that is, that's a way of almost throwing a shot with hips but no movement. So if someone starts to come in and all of a sudden they're within range, pretend like you're taking a whip and you're going to just whip someone. Whoosh! That's it. They're coming in, they take a step, they open up, and you just do that. And you aim towards what's open. Now, since I'm not moving, but I'm still generating energy and movement from my hips. I'm still staying in stance, and I'm still keeping my blocking technique going, but I'm using the open opportunity to throw a shot. Now, we'll talk about more of it next week too. When you throw a shot on someone who's actively, I'm going to be an offensive fighter and I'm going to come in and I'm going to throw the first shot, and somehow you can throw the shot before his shot lands, he's going to go, whoa, whoa, okay. Ruins their entire shot prospect. So once they start planning, this is what I'm going to do, you want to stop them fighting their fight. Get them so they're mentally thinking, okay, I can't throw that shot again, so that combination is gone. All that type of stuff. That's when mentality comes into play. And again, next week we'll talk about mentality, about the 3 major fears about fighting. Okay? I've mentioned a few of them already, but I'll get into great detail. So like I said, all of these things are going to be about the basics, how your body naturally does stuff, how your brain thinks about things. How am I getting this wrong? What do I need to do to fix it? All of this is going to happen very quickly. And you're like, okay, is it number 2? Is it number 12? Is it number 17? Or is it really actually 1? A lot of things go through your mind. You're going to have to figure your way out. But the best way to do is just always remember to go back to basics, relax, and really stop overthinking it. Okay? So, we've pretty much done some of the basic shots for here. Now, we're going to go to the shield. All right? Now, as I said, you can use the sword to block shots. You can even block shots all the way down to your leg by actually do what's almost like a fencing parry. Instead of trying to just drop it down, you drop the sword tip down, and that can pretty much block your entire right hip to right leg. From down here, you can just pretty much drop, and you're protecting everything from your head down to your hip. So you have the capability of blocking everything with the sword. If you do that, you're not really striking, so you're never going to win. Also, you can block It's almost like a teepee. You set up a pivot point right up on top, and you just do this. As you can see, I'm twisting my wrist again to make sure I get past. If I just do this, there's a chance that they can throw past and around it. You want to make sure you get it from shoulder past shoulder. Boom, boom. Now, there's another way, and that's called this method, where you're taking the pivot point, instead of just doing this, you're rotating around it. That's blocking everything from shoulder to head. This is blocking everything from shoulder to head. The best thing about this is the fact that there's two main things. Number one, you're not blinding yourself with the shield. Number two, you can immediately block a shot and you're already in position to throw a shot. But that is becoming essentially a defensive fighting style. If you're offensive, this is usually not going to be the primary way of doing it. If you're offensive, what you can do is throw and then immediately block into one of those positions. Okay? So the sword is very important technique for blocking. Okay. The roll down and the roll up. This is why you have a small shield to begin with. If someone goes and throws a shot to your leg, you just take your elbow and just roll it. Roll it down, goes up to the head, roll it up. As you can see, I'm not blinding myself. Tip, tip. I'm not blinding myself like this. All of a sudden, I can see everything. When you start using the small shield to begin with, later on, when you get a big one, it's going to be heavier. You're like, oh man, this is, oh, I'm doing the same movement, but I'm moving it at a much shorter distance. That's the whole point of that. You need to learn to move it. And when you change to whatever shield, it'll come naturally, and you're not going to immediately use it as a wall. Okay? So, someone throws a shot to the leg, boom, down and back up. Don't leave it down there. Okay? Shot to the head, boom. Now, when you start doing enough, what you're going to see is you're actually going to start rotating your left hip. This is a lot of energy and movement. Boom. Turn my hip a little bit. Instead of just doing this, now my movement has gone almost 5 or 6 additional inches. There's no way they're going to get around where if you go here, if you happen to stop short, they still might have a tendency of still hitting the leg. Boom. Rotate the hip. Now, this is where your body dynamics comes into play again. Your body wants to naturally be balanced. Okay? Now, what does that mean? Give you an example. If I'm going to step forward, I'm bringing my right hip forward to throw a shot, but I'm also bringing my left hip back, which is automatically opening the shield so I can see better, and it's already putting me in a good defense position. Say, for example, someone throws a shot to my leg, all of a sudden, boom, okay, whatever's going on, I now can step and throw. Or, if it comes down to it, if they throw a shot across my body, whenever a shot that is thrown across body, you take it just like a fist, and you're trying to punch the sword, your opponent's sword, okay? So if he goes and tries for a right side headshot, you punch for the sword, for their sword. punch for their sword. As you can see, my left hip is going forward, which now automatically gives me a balanced position to throw an opposite side shot. Same thing, low leg, boom. All of a sudden, hey, they're throwing to my head over here. I'm going to do this, brings my left hip back, my right hip forward, which automatically gives me the capability of throwing a shot. Now, after a while, if you do that with someone, which I totally say you should, find someone and say, all right, throw a leg shot to my left leg. So they throw a left leg shot and they're like, boom. All of a sudden, you're going to realize you're already in position to throw a left leg shot on them. It's called same shot, same shot. Whenever you're throwing a shot on someone, they're immediately going to have the capability to throw the same shot on you. If they're throwing opposite, you're punching, you're throwing opposite. It's a natural way. So you're not fighting being either offensive or defensive style. When I said to you before, one of the things you need to do whenever you start fighting is doing the 2-minute drill. You fight for 2 minutes, the other person blocks for 2 minutes. Switch it up, you do that twice, and then you do single shot on each other. What you do is, when you find the single shot, you're going to go, okay, the person's going to throw leg, and all of a sudden you block, you want to immediately throw the leg shot. Hey, guess what? We're now into that same shot, single shot, single shot. The more you do that, you're going to realize how easy it is to fight. I'm going to be defensive and strike. I'm going to be defensive, strike, strike, defense, strike, defense. It's going to balance out because your body naturally wants to do it. Okay? So, anything that's across the body, right? So it's over to the right side, punch, punch, punch. As you can see, use exaggerated hip movements if you want to. There's nothing wrong with that. That's actually going to help you get ready for what's known to be called combinations, which we're going to discuss next week. See, when I go through this, I go through it in pretty much detail and how things build upon themselves. So you'd be like, hey, when do we actually get to fight? I usually spent an entire week in a classroom teaching all this stuff to begin with, so when they actually got into armor and started fighting, they could refer back and say, what am I doing wrong? I'm not stepping first, that's why. And then they get it, and they catch it really quick. So, now, actually right before we go back to the push, we're still going to go with the punch. Now, the punch also is designed for straight out. Now, this is going to come into play for a lot of center grip eaters. What they're going to do is they're going to punch, but they're also going to twist a little bit. They can either push and twist. Now, this is actually where the push comes into play. They're going to punch, and as soon as they hit the sword, they're going to push to have control of the sword. Or if someone comes in and they're going to try and do something with a combination, like I said, which is more than one shot, okay? Once they throw that first shot and you strike and you don't try and push it, boom, they're going to immediately go for their second shot. But if all of a sudden they throw the shot, you hit, you push, pressure, you punch, and then you push, they're now, they lost their ability to throw the planned second shot. Now, the other nice thing about the push As you can see, I'm punching over here and then I'm pushing still the sword away from my body. I'm now opening up more line of sight, okay? Now, the one major advantage, if you're gonna be an offensive fighters love center grips. Why? Because center grips play the range game really well. What I mean by that, you can have it here, and you can see a lot of me. If I have it out here, you see a lot less of me. And what I can do is, I can keep it here, and I can step and keep the shield exactly where it's at. Now I'm going long range to close range, throw, control, push, strike. This is where, if you're very energetic, very athletic, you love to move around a lot, this is your game. If you're very defensive, usually the strap is going to be good because you got a lot of area that you can block with. This area is going to be the most effective for range. So you can come in forward, strike, push back out to gain range and a lot less area for your opponent to see. And then you come in again, step back out, and you can throw both above, side, opposite, everything very well. But you're going to be doing this a lot, almost a little bit like punching. It's not going to be straight, it's going to be punching out. You're going to get wore out, you're going to sweat a lot, you're going to need a lot of water. But hey, if it works for you, it's phenomenal. I go both with strapped and center grip. Depends upon the person that I'm fighting, the type of tournaments, everything like that. But these are going to be the keys. But no matter what, you should always start with the small shield. Strapped or center grip, small. You need to be able to move. You need to be able to understand what can you throw, what can you see, what can they not see. All right, I'm going to be an offensive fighter. I'm going to be doing this. My shield's going to be in close all the time, so I can see a lot and I can do a lot of throwing. I'm going to be defensive and I'm going to be blocking a whole bunch of stuff like this. Now, the one style that I use is called a half moon crescent. Crescent. Don't have enough room. Now, this is not just a stationary position like this. This is a very movement-oriented stance. So what I mean by that is, when my sword goes up, my shield goes down. When my shield goes up, my sword goes down. So what I'm doing here is, I'm creating just a little open area that's like a crescent. It's going to be almost impossible to get any type of shot in a circular area, because any flat snap is going to run into either the sword or the shield at some point. The easiest one that can be done is going to be either the thrust or the wrap. But if someone gets in really close on me, I just change my position and do different blocking techniques. I also have what's known as a windshield wiper blocking technique. It works for me, I don't know how many people actually use it, if anyone else but me. What I do is, when I get into a position where someone is going to throw a wrap on me, which are really hard to defend, what I do is, I'll throw and I will put my hand on top of my helmet and I just do this to block. It annoys so many people because I can block almost everything that comes to my back with it. But that's my style. It might not work for you, but I really enjoy it. So like I said, the half moon crescent is very good for not blinding you, blocking almost every combination. And since it is body dynamic friendly, when the shield goes down, the sword goes up. I'm totally balanced in my body. Shield goes up, sword goes down, still balanced in my body. I'm not committing to being over to one side and low or one side and high. And I can change the positions from this to an A-frame, high guard, to shield only. There's a lot of different stances. We'll talk a little bit about those next week. But like I said, there is so much involved in all this. Trying to go from one to another. They all relate to each other in some fashion. So we went from yesterday's, which was the basics, from how you move, to the body dynamics, to body conflict, how you can fix some of those, to the basic aspect of sword and shield, the basic type of shots. The difference between the swords and shield is definitely a range game issue, and you need to figure that out. And the range is always going to be determined initially about your movement and stance. I'm going to start way far out. I'm going to put my shield out to block a lot of that. But I want to throw the first shot, so I'm going to make sure I step first, come in. Do I want to bring my shield in so I can throw in front? Do I want to keep it out there and step into it? Everything is going to be dependent upon your style and what feels good for you. Now, that doesn't mean that that's the one style you stick with. Things change. Oh, well, when I use a really short sword, I fight differently than with a long sword. Hey, this person is fighting with two weapons. It's a very different blocking technique, very different throwing technique. So you have to adapt. Hey, this is great, but you still have to continually improve and change. And that might be everything from, hey, I'm going from a really long sword to a really short sword. You're going to have to change how you fight, how your stance is, and how your blocking is going to be. Then we went with shield. Okay, the first thing that you need to be aware of is that your sword can be a shield. This is not one and this is not the other. Okay, you cannot attack with the shield. Okay, that's too dangerous. But you can block with the sword. That's why I didn't put shield over here. That's bad. Jojo Mojo. Mojo Jojo? Yeah, Mojo Jojo. Alright, so when you got a strap, all you do is rotate down, roll up, roll down. When you do that, make sure you also add the hip into it. Increases the movement, also increases the chance of the sword or the shield going past the point that a sword might still hit you. Punch anything to the opposite side of your body. Or, if you're doing center grip, punch out to the front. And when you do that, you always need to push after that. Now you might want to just punch one time, throw, and then push after that, because now you have better control because you're in better range. That's going to be something. So you might go punch, 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 push, throw. Okay? Different combinations next week. And like I said, body dynamics, my favorite is a half moon crescent. I can step. And I'm still always very easy into a blocking technique or a striking technique and I'm generating movement. I'm not starting from a total straight stance, then going. But that's just one of the techniques that I've used. All right, we're going to end this class today there. Next week, we're going to be talking about combinations. All right, combinations are going to include everything from more than one shot into opposite sides, fakes, double pumps, different things where you're not expecting I'm not going to say a newbie fighter, but they fall for it all the time because they pretty much commit to one single thing, and you have to understand you've got to be relaxed and fluid. So like I said, you might be able to go block a shot, but if you don't have a secondary or an alternate defense, you're going to fall for combinations or feints all the time. All right, Xeric Saturn, thank you very much for showing up. Please, as always, give me comments, and I'll see you again next week.